What's up, y'all? Today, or should I say tonight,
Definitely night.
we're starting our new series talking about night vision content. So the series is called Stand 2, and that's the term that I had to get brought up to speed by Grumpfucius on. So what is Stand 2, Brian?
So stand 2 is going to be the hours where an hour or so before the sun sets or the sun rises. That is the most optimal time for your enemy to attack you or for you to do an attack. So that's when you're going to prep your night vision or any other related equipment.
So we're starting our new series, Stand 2, to really kind of provide some educational night vision content. We've working with the experts over at Nightfall Optics. So if you're not familiar with them, Nightfall Optics is an amazing night vision provider. We're big fans of them. They're the experts. They are super knowledgeable as far as the industry goes, as far as the products go, the technology, the usage. And so, yes, we have some experience with using night vision. Brian has used night vision when he was on active duty in the Army and may have used it in, some countries you've seen on TV, I guess, but we wanted to make sure that we got their expert information to bring into this foray because we want to know what their customers are asking them. What are people asking them when they're buying the device for the first time? What are people asking them when they're trying to determine what's the best device for them to make sure they get a good investment? Night vision's obviously not cheap.
No.
You have both of these are yours on the table right now. So we've got a real PVS 14. And then we have a digital one, which
Correct.
We're going to get into digital night vision. Too long, didn't watch. It stinks, don't buy it. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the differences in the tubes and kind of answer a couple questions. So this first episode is going to be really about what is night vision, right? Where is the wizard inside? What is Gandalf doing when he's fighting the Balrog inside of your night vision tube to bring you all that magic? And then kind of talk about a brief history of night vision. Obviously, like most things, technology is driven by war. And so the advent of night vision technology was based on military use. Surprise. It wasn't made for us normies. It's crazy how that works out. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you guys being here for this journey. And let's go ahead and get it on. So what is night vision, Brian? Is it a superpower?
No. It's a piece of advanced technology that really isn't as advanced. Once you get into the makeup of the intensifier, it's just a lot of electricity type going on in there.
Again, we're cavemen. We do have, between the two of us, he's got a lot more night vision experience, but we've both definitely been running around at night a lot lately out here in the piney woods, more or less, and really trying to make sure that we're able to present both a newer user, average Joe, everyman kind of perspective, and then a perspective on some real world use and actually using it in a serious use context. I don't want to say anything involving
Recreational shooting.
but yeah, we'll say using it at night to hunt skinwalkers.
Art, look at
Or werewolves.
stargazing. I stargaze with mine. That's the only reason why I have it, is I like to go stargazing.
Stargazing's an important part of one of the other enjoyable non-shooting capacities you'll be using it in. And I mean, let's be real, like night walks are super fun.
Absolutely.
Night hikes with your buddies are a great time. Night fishing, as long as you're not getting it wet, might be pretty fun too to use with night vision. I have not ever night fished with night vision on. I could probably, spoiler alert, tell you that may change. We're going to be doing something stupid. But so let's get into what is night vision. First off, I kind of want to just nip this in the bud. So we will be talking about thermal and a pretty good amount of discussion about thermal, but for right now, we're not. So if you're interested about thermal, please stick around, hang out with us. We're going to get there. But in this video, we're really talking about what is night vision and the history of night vision. So we're not going to be talking about any thermal or thermal fusion devices. I will kind of reference them as a, this might be a good use case for thermal or something along those lines. But for the most part, we're talking about what is night vision. So we're not going to get super granular into this. There is a lot of great content out there that has gone down the scientific rabbit hole per se.
That's kind of where the magic happens.
Light functions in a spectrum, right? Also things that are on the spectrum, but with this time we're talking about light. So light functions in a visible spectrum, right? There are visible wavelengths of light, and then there are infrared wavelengths of light. The visible ones you can see with your normal eyeball. The infrared ones, you can't see with your normal eyeball unless you're like, you know, a vampire bat human hybrid or some like
Riddick,
weird snake human creature, or if you're Riddick and you got some expensive surgery for some, you know, glassy eyeballs. Other than that,
Shine job.
Yeah, shine job. There you go.
You're not afraid of the dark, are you?
We're going to, you know, key in our cool night vision overlay footage right now. Ba-ching! Oh wait, it doesn't make that noise either. Oh man, everyone lied to me.
Hate to disappoint. It is a click. It is a click.
I loved to play Splinter Cell though back in the day on my PS1, so it's hard not to enjoy that a little bit. You know, be like, Spicy 6 going dark.
What I don't get is it was when he flipped it down, not when he turned it on. It made the whining noise. They auto off coming up. They don't auto on coming down.
Yeah, depending on what the mount is and what the pod is, it may have some cool features like that to where they're going to auto off when you bring them out or flip the mount up. I know your old school Rhino mount does that, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay.
It's built into the old J-arm for the PVS-14.
Your natural night vision, your eyeball has what is called scotopic vision. So essentially how the rods and the cones are functioning inside your eye for viewing low light. People will talk about how they're able to see stars, for instance, when they're on the periphery of your eyeball and you're not looking directly at them. And then when you look directly at them, they're not as visible.
Right. So cool side note, back in the day, the Army would teach you at night without your night vision to scan everything in basically an infinity symbol or the figure 8. And that's how you can get a full image of what you're scanning in the forest or the jungle, wherever you might be. But search in a figure 8.
Right now, we're going to talk about essentially how an image intensifier works, a little bit of the anatomy of it. I'll put some visuals up. If you have the visualism like me, hopefully it'll help give you a little better idea. Perspective of the parts inside of the tube. Digital versus analog. Essentially, this is the part where we're going to cover digital, but you have active illumination and then you have image intensification. And as a third, you have thermal imaging, which again, we're not really getting into, but thermal's amazing. You need both, honestly. A lot of dudes are running dual band setups. So essentially with dual band, you'd be able to have a thermal imager and your night vision. So you'd be able to spot and use your thermal to locate whatever predator you're hunting at nighttime, and the night vision would help you navigate, get there, do all of the stuff that you would have to do with night vision. So there's a lot of great use cases for thermal out there, right? Everything that exists that's not a xenomorph is giving off a heat signature. So using thermal to spot, using thermal as weapon-mounted optic, it's got a lot of great use cases. It can't do everything because otherwise we'd all be running around with, thermal Borg overlays, I guess, at this point. Or soon we will. We'll see how that goes. So with thermal, you're not going to be able to see through glass. You're not really going to be able to read anything or get any kind of detail off of objects that aren't giving off heat to be able to kind of give you that detail. So unfortunately, there's a lot of things thermal doesn't do. I'm sure in the future, when John Connor's saving us from the Terminator, we'll have some pretty cool thermal upgrades. But until then, here we are.
It might even use a different wavelength.
I'm on a different wavelength.
Who's got the Oreos, man?
The other downsides to digital is that it is a digital screen in the back. We tried to hook up our phone recording device to Brian's digital one earlier. And oh man, it was an epic show.
Abysmal.
So there's a screen that's not at the correct orientation. It's not horizontal inside. You're now dealing with all sorts of different refresh rates, flickering of an actual little tiny LCD screen. There's a lot going on in there, but essentially it's basically just a camera with a giant infrared spotlight that is projecting onto a screen in the back. There's a reason that all digital night vision is significantly cheaper than all real image intensification units like PVS-14. Pick a different device out there. Nightfall has a bunch of great options like the MH1, for example.
Yeah, and to make matters even worse, with digital sets, you do get motion sick because there is a frame rate delay. So as you're looking at an image, so let's say you're trying to walk from one side of the room to the other, as you're moving, what you're seeing is not at the same speed of what you're actually doing.
And that's a good reason that no digital night vision units are used by anyone out there with any serious use case for it.
No.
At all. Unless you're, really rocking out with your Call of Duty goggles you got.
I think I need to find a set.
You're that one guy out there. I think we need some of the fake Amazon panos just to look cool, just so we can pose in Instagram photos and people actually think we're legit.
Going after the Call of Duty ones, they look cooler.
Yep. Let's get into image intensifiers and the magic and the wizard inside. So is there a wizard inside of night vision? Unfortunately, Gandalf is nowhere to be found inside of any of the units we have. Maybe he's in one of yours. Maybe you get like Radagast the Green or something. Bidooch.
Move this man!
Where do I order that at?
I don't know. I'll have to ask Cody.
Okay.
Yeah. Shout out to Cody from Nightfall. We love you.
Awesome dude.
Yep. This magic that is happening inside the tube essentially is because there is an image intensifier inside that is causing that light to be intensified into a usable image on your eyeball on the back end. So on the front of this tube, there's a lens and light is going into that lens. So the image intensifier is taking available light and amplifying it. And the color of the image is determined by the phosphor used in the tube, not phosphorus. We're not talking about Willie Pete and how to light on fire. So we'll get into the benefit. I knew you smile. I felt you smile when I said that.
Well, it's a thing.
It's a great use
I always,
white
instead
phosphor.
of saying phosphor, I always say phosphorus.
And we're going to get into all the terminology in the next video. So anything as far as like fancy science words or super, cool night vision speak, we're going to talk about all of that. We'll talk about FOM, interpupillary distance, talk about filming on tubes, L3 versus L-bit, mono versus bino, green versus white, you name it. We're planning on talking about it in that video. If you got any ideas or suggestions or stuff you're curious about, put it in the comments. Really, we want to make this an educational night vision experience that is answering questions that you guys have. A lot of the questions we've been presented with were stuff that Cody's customers asks him. So people that are getting ready to buy their first unit, people that bought their first unit, people that are thinking about upgrading, you name it, we're answering questions that customers have actually asked the night guys at Nightfall so that we can kind of help make some people's night vision experience a little easier.
Yeah, and it'll make us research. So get in them comments down there and ask questions.
Yeah, for real though. If you guys got something you're just dying to know, we'd love to hear it.
I mean, even if you want to call us Tacticarans, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Get in there and do it.
Whoever that
Get in
guy
there
was
and
to
do
call
it.
us Tacticarans, I appreciate his engagement.
Yeah, me too. It gave me a really good idea for some stuff I'm gonna wear.
So for a long time, night vision was green, and that's just how the technology was working at the time. That's why you have so many iconic pop culture and video game references, things like Splinter Cell, where that sound effects come in. Image intensifiers work off of available light. So if there is no available light, there is nothing for them to intensify. And so when you see a lot of night vision and you see it looking like almost like snow, like a blizzard, that extra scintillation in there, that's caused by not enough available light, and the tube is trying to magnify essentially nothing and creating that distortion. So
it could also be due to the electromagnetic field inside the tube pulling the electrons through. So that's where you'll get that snow effect.
would you like to know more?
Dude, click that link.
That's kind of why active was a thing for so long, because they didn't have the technology. Now that we have the technology, we can still understand that you still need light. It's where the IR illuminators on PVS 14s come in, where IR illuminators on your weapons or your weapon mounted lights, vampire surefire heads, you name it, right? There's got to be some light available. In that case, there's a lot of great context for thermal. Why you see a lot of dudes with dual band setups on their helmets now, where they got a thermal and monocular, and they're able to kind of use both and use their strengths to make it into a better system.
Right, like the fusion overlay type stuff.
Yeah, we're not talking about the fusion overlay, although that's about as cool as it gets, to be honest.
That's on the bucket list. I'm gonna have a fusion overlay.
All right, so light's entering the tube through that lens. The photons, which are particles of light, are hitting the photocathode inside, and then that photocathode is converting those photons into electrons. So electrons are then going to pass through what is called the microchannel plate. And essentially this plate is multiplying the amount of electrons inside so that there are more electrons leaving it and hitting that phosphor screen to create this intensified image. Essentially more electrons means more light, so it's intensifying what it has available into a visually usable picture at the end. Get out of here, bug. This is my nighttime show.
So when the electrons go through the intensifier plate, what happens is that single electron bounces through the channel, which makes more electrons come out of the plate. So you get a cascade of them to go down to hit the phosphor intensifier.
So let's get into the history of night vision. And Brian essentially was using night vision in 1998 in a cold part of the world before he went to a hot part of the world later and used it there. So in that sense, it wasn't super prevalent. Not everybody had it, but it did exist and was available.
Right. So like when I first got to basic, we got a rudimentary, very brief, hey, put it on your face, give it back, They didn't want us to tear it up because, let's face it, we're a bunch of dumb kids. And then when I got to my first duty station, not everyone was issued it.
Yeah.
And then everyone was issued it. And then I went to a different unit. Everyone for sure had it. But the time I used it versus the time now, that time gap, it's like technology in your computer. It grows and leaps and bounds. And that's why I'm relearning night vision. I can still function under night vision, shoot under night vision the same as I used to, but now it's just more advanced.
Absolutely. I wanted to put that little, pin in our timeline to talk about the history part to give you a perspective. So it's been around for a long time. So back in 1929, I'm gonna use my cheat sheet. So 1929, a Hungarian physicist named, I'm not going to pronounce this right. We're from Texas, just get used to it.
For real.
I think it's Kalman Tahani. So he invented an infrared sensitive electronic camera that was used for anti-aircraft defense in the UK. So that's pre-World War II. Gen Zero night vision comes around right around World War II. Everyone's seen that iconic picture of the German soldier with the Sturmgewehr and the giant spotlight and the backpack battery. So that's kind of what we're going to get into next. So that's going to be the German Vampire unit. It's the Zielgerät 1229, aka the Vampire, introduced about 1939, and then it was actually fielded in 1943 initially. So basically, in 1943, the Germans began testing IR devices, and they were testing telescopic rangefinders and stuff like that on tanks. Panther tanks specifically, so a giant tank. Of course, like everything, one nation does it and the other ones kind of copy them. So the US immediately starts working on something.
I mean, espionage is a thing.
Yeah, that or battlefield pickups.
You know, you can find some good surplus like that.
Yeah, I wonder what's happening to all that surplus we left in Trash Canistan recently.
It's for sale on Amazon.
Yeah, that or it's getting broken down by somebody in PLA. Anyway, so 1943, Germans are testing that out. After that, the US develops the M1 and M3 sniper scopes, or snooper scope, which I'm really curious how that name came about. And those saw limited use in World War II in Korea. So these are all active illumination devices that have a big battery pack, a giant infrared spotlight to be able to function. So
yeah, you'll see it on
sneaky.
See it on an M1 carbine, which is funny that they put the sniper scope on an M1 carbine. So that should give you an idea of its effective range for viewing in the dark.
Totally, not very far. It's one of those things, if you had it and everybody else didn't, well,
it doesn't matter what
you're emitting. It's not really a big deal how much light you're putting out. But it turns out the Soviets in 1942 were experimenting on a device called the PAU-2. It kind of looks like a weird grandpappy of today's binocular night vision. I'll put it up on screen. It kind of is like weird insectoid thing going on.
Tell me about Gen 1 and the Starlight Starbright.
All right, so we get into the Vietnam era and you get into the iconic Starlight scope, which essentially is the first time that there was really any passive night vision aiming devices. Granted, this thing was pretty chunky. One of the military videos called it small. I laughed about that a lot.
It's great.
It's about half the length of the M16, and when you put it on there, it doubled the weight of the rifle. So pretty chunky, but again, small compared to a gigantic wooden battery on your back and a freaking spotlight. Like, it's still small. So we get into the Starlight scope, and that's Gen 1. So you got to think that this was pretty revolutionary for its time, but in comparison to today's stuff, even the Gen 2 Plus tubes that are out there, which are super great and usable, that's not even close to where this was at, right? This is like the dinosaur era still.
Right, I mean, just to get basic night vision capability, they had to take 3 intensifiers and stack them one in front of the other.
Yeah, we'll put some visuals up on screen because it's pretty interesting to think about. But again, technology is just going to grow leaps and bounds. So the Starlight was first developed in 1964 and then first issued in 1967 in the NAM. So this is also where the ANPVS designation comes into play because, military speak and acronyms has to happen. So that stands for Army Navy Portable Visual Search.
Which makes absolute sense.
Totally. Industrial complex and
nomenclature.
Terminology, yep.
They use some words and call it nomenclature.
Government likes acronyms.
Gotta love it.
All right, so for Gen 2, moving into post-Vietnam, right, the microchannel plate was kind of added to these passive devices.
Right.
So their ability to magnify that light increase quite a bit, and you get into a much more closer to our modern age, right? There's a huge gap between Gen 1 and Gen 2 compared to Gen 2 and Gen 3. Obviously, there's, changes and improvements, but comparatively, like the amount of light that was happening inside that device, big deal. Microchannel plate for the win.
And it's getting smaller and lighter.
Yep. You get into things like the AN-PVS 5. What were you calling that before?
It's a face breaker.
And it's a face breaker because it has a giant...
So it was a ring you wore around your head that had a plate that went across your brow and down to your cheekbones.
And I think that's what the Ghostbusters goggles were.
That is exactly what that is.
So that's how I recognize it. It is the Ghostbusters goggles. I'll throw it up on screen.
Yep.
So that's post-Vietnam, late 70s, right? You get into like the PVS 5s, which is 1971. It was in service from 72 to 1990. And mostly in aviation roles or for some high-speed dudes before other things were introduced, right?
Yeah.
So we get into Gen 3 and you get into the PVS 7, post-Vietnam Gen 2, and then Gen 3 coming in the late 80s. So they improved the quality by changing to a new photocathode material, which is gallium arsenide. I'm not a chem-ologist or anything like that.
Metallurgist?
So I'm not a metallurgist yet. All right, so... essentially, the gallium arsenide was adding an ion barrier film, which helped increase the tube life. And the Gen 3 basically had a better light amplification, a better resolution, and a clearer image. And that film was kind of helping extend the life of it, protecting it from extra photons coming in.
Yeah.
All right, so PVS 7, that's the dual tube to single tube, meaning that passive aiming was not a thing.
Yeah, 2 eyes to 1, and put the intensifier center between your eyes.
Okay. I've never looked through one of those, so I'm sure it's pretty interesting. But you can put Gen 3 tubes inside a PVS 7. It was designed in 85 and in service in 88, so I'm as old as the PVS 7. And so,
I used to use them, bro.
Yeah, I know. And so it being 2 to 1 provided a lot of interesting struggles as well, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely. Like there was a loss of depth perception.
Okay.
It took a lot of time to get used to moving and doing things under such a night vision device.
Yeah.
Like wearing it and setting your depth of field of view so you can see what's in your battle space, to having to look down and look at something else. You had to crank the nose of it, all that you were constantly adjusting it.
Yeah, I bet. When you get into binos, which is Gen 3, pachow, fun segue. So when we're getting into, when we're talking about Gen 3, we're talking about the late 80s. And that essentially is most modern devices now, right? Regardless if it's got a thin film or no film, regardless of what the FOM is, most everything is pretty much going to be Gen 3 or Gen 2 Plus. And again, it may be something that you may be able to save a little bit of money on a Gen 2 Plus tube, but in all reality, it's still super useful and going to be
absolutely
nothing. Again, if you have night vision versus not having night vision, a monocular is still a very useful tool. There's a lot of capacities we're going to get into later where a monocular may actually be better than a set of binos in certain cases. We talked about dual band already, right? Regardless of where you're trying to get into the night vision market, there's lots of great options. Check out nightfalloptics.com. They're the ones that are making this whole series possible and definitely want to help answer some of your Nightfall questions. So
for real though,
regardless of whatever you got, they are experts and they'll be able to help you out. So check them out.
They can give you the rundown on the sundown.
And the last thing we wanted to cover for this one is Gen 4. So I've seen this a few places recently, and I don't know if it's just a marketing thing. It kind of seems to be that way from our research today, but essentially there's not an official designated military Gen 4. So the term's thrown around a lot, and I think it's for marketing, or maybe it's for companies that are adding things to the tubes and improvements style, but essentially it's widely debated what that exactly means, but it's referring to like a filmless tube that's going to have auto gating technology. So it's going to have smart systems built into it that are going to not allow it to be damaged by sudden bright lights. We'll get into auto gating and all the stuff in the terminology video next, but I brought it up so I have to at least touch on it a little bit. I'll throw up some kind of basic definition as well from someone smarter than us. And it's going to also have improved SNR, so that's signal to noise. Again, a lot for the next video, and a better resolution and better clarity. So this is kind of just a brief rundown of night vision history. There's so much to cover on this topic. It is a veritable rabbit hole that we can almost go down to ad nauseum infinity. But we really kind of just wanted to get through some of the basic stuff. So like covering the first question, which was what is it really? And then talking about the difference in the history and kind of where things have come from to give you a perspective on, that may be an expensive unit, but the amount of technology that's in there is pretty impressive. And there's still lots of great options. We both are big fans of binoculars. Not that digital one though.
This digital bad.
Yeah, digital bad. No digital. Oof.
Like a PVS 14 with a white phosphorus thin filmed intensifier in it is an amazing piece of equipment, and it costs less than dual tubes. If you need to, you can mount that on a rifle. We'll go into a lot of that in later detail, but there are options out there, and don't be afraid to look.
And a binocular with a good binocular with a good laser aiming module, you can do quite a bit.
Yeah, laser aiming modules is going to be a whole video of its own, maybe it's a multiple part. There's some entertaining information on that as well, as far as like Chinese RPK surgery goes and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's your PRK joke. That's funny. Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion to get into on the various different devices, various different lasers, lights, you name it. There's so much to go into, and we're going to be covering this all kind of in a long-term thing on this Stand 2 series we're doing. So please stay tuned. Where can they find us?
You can find us at SpicySnafu on Instagram. And of course, you're already here on YouTube, so hit like and subscribe. Hit the little bell for the notifications. Go in here and call us Tacticarans, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, share it with your buddies. Tell them that we're idiots. Whatever you want to do, we support you. And until next time,
stay safe in all you do.
And stay spicy. Get out there. Get some reps in. Listen to some crickets. It's a good time.